One night, I decided to explore an abandoned house because of a dare amongst me and a few friends. Part of this dare was that I would visit this house at 3 a.m. on Halloween. To make sure I actually followed through with the dare, two of my friends went there the day before to leave two objects throughout the house. It was my job to go through the house and collect these objects while filming the whole thing. This was to be like a sort of scavenger hunt. The objects were a stuffed bear and a gold tumbler. They hid them in different rooms of the house, but didn't tell me where I was supposed to search the house until I found them. The rumor was that all the people that lived in the house over the years had experienced some sort of strange activity. The most well known one in the neighborhood was the one that occurred most recently a few years ago. The story goes there was a family that moved into the house that had two small children. After living in the house for a few weeks, the children complained of hearing strange noises throughout the house at night. As their time in the house went on, the strange occurrences began to increase. It had eventually gotten to the point where the children were hearing distant whispering and seeing unrecognizable figures moving by the doorway. The parents at first believed the kids were just imagining all of this strange activity until one night the whole house became filled with sounds of whispers and footsteps. The parents, along with the kids, were now witnessing all of this unusual activity. The family hurriedly left in the middle of the night without packing anything. This happened a few years ago, and the house has been abandoned ever since. The day had come where I was supposed to enter the house. The plan was that we'd have a sleepover the night before Halloween, and at 3 a.m., we'd sneak out and go to the house. My friends waited outside while I hesitantly walked inside of the house, the dark, dark, creepy house. And then it was so hard to see. I was only using my phone's flashlight and I was constantly bumping into things. The house was filled with furniture and belongings of the previous inhabitants. As I walked, I could hear the floor creak under my feet, which made things that much more creepy. I made my way down the long hallway, and as I walked through the house, I became creeped out even more. When looking at all the left behind belongings, the furniture, and everything that was just still sitting in the house, it just got scarier and scarier. I wondered how terrified they must have been to just leave everything behind like that. Everything was extremely dusty and the air smelled damp and musty. I began to check the rooms. The first room I entered looked like a child's room, still full of toys. It gave off the same creepy vibe as the rest of the house. All of the furniture and other belongings were still present in the room. I walked into the room and noticed a blue stuffed bear sitting in the corner. The bear looked out of place in this room as it was the only item that wasn't dusty like all the other objects that were scattered about. I figured it was one of the hidden items, so I picked it up. I continued to make my way through the house, checking the rooms. As I was looking, I thought I heard footsteps, but passed it off as just being my imagination. I realized I had checked all of the rooms and decided to go back to the kitchen area because I had not really checked that part of the house completely, so I wanted to go back for another look. When I got to the kitchen, I noticed that all of the cabinets were wide open, which wouldn't have been too strange if I didn't remember them being closed when I glanced in there earlier. I saw the gold tumbler setting on the counter, which was also strange because I didn't notice it there earlier. It was metallic gold and really hard to miss. A shiver suddenly came over me, and I quickly grabbed the tumbler and ran out of the kitchen and headed towards the door. I reached the door, but when I tried turning the knob, the door wouldn't budge. I suddenly heard footsteps behind me. Unlike earlier, where I could have been imagining it, these were definitely footsteps I was hearing. I ran towards the couch that was sitting in the middle of the living room and crouched down beside the couch. I was honestly unsure of where to hide because it was a little hard to tell where the footsteps were actually coming from. And then at times it just sounded like they were coming from all directions. One point it sounded like they were behind me, sometimes it sounded like they were beside of me, sometimes in front of me. At one point I thought I felt a hand on my shoulder. I suddenly became it suddenly became very quiet, and I peeked from around the dusty old couch and noticed what looked like a little girl standing in the corner. Her head suddenly turned at me, and then she started moving towards me quickly in a quick, staticky motion. I tried to run but couldn't move. And then suddenly she was standing right in front of me and stretched her hand out toward my face. Then she suddenly vanished. I ran back to the door and tried turning the knob again. This time the door opened and I ran outside. My friends were still outside waiting for me with confused looks. One of them asked what took me so long, and I explained everything that happened and showed them the video from where I had been recording. They said how weird it was and explained that they hid both of the items towards the door in front of the hallway, not too far from the door, so I could just go in there and grab them and then quickly get out. One friend said it looked like they had been moved by someone. I showed them the part of the video where I saw the little girl standing in the corner, but when they looked, they didn't see anything. She didn't even show up on camera. One friend believed it was the girl from some of the stories about the house. Everyone who has stayed there had mentioned seeing her and how she seems to follow you even after you've already left the house. And then we weren't sure if we should say anything to anyone about what happened. We figured no one would believe us since it sounded so ridiculous and because the proof didn't actually show up in the video.